Oh, yes. We got a little hip hop coming in. Mountain West Hoops Insider, another edition, episode 6. Got my man Eli doing what he does best. His hair is getting better by the episode. If you haven't noticed, his hair is getting better by the episode. What up, Eli?
That man, I would disagree with that. I feel like I need a haircut in the worst way right now, but I do appreciate it. Yeah, we're back again. More Mountain West hoops. Always a pleasure to talk about this conference. It's been so much fun these past few weeks. It's heating up and it's getting really busy at the top. We got some good games and some good things going on through the conference, so it's been a lot of fun.
A lot of unpredictability. We have a really big split with our game of the week. Last time we had was Utah State and Colorado State. So we had a split there, kind of dramatic split at that. And then Boise was beat also by Colorado State. And there was a split there, if I'm not mistaken. And then, yeah, we've had some sweeps, some splits. We've had all kind of events. So we'll let Eli kind of tell us about what's been going on. And then we have 4 special guests today. We have Kenny DeWeese coming on first from Wyoming, assistant coach. Recognized as one of the 50 most impactful coaches at his level. So excited to have him on. We also have head coach Jean Prelot coming on from San Jose State. They've won 3 in a row and just got a player of the week from their squad. So coming off a weekend split. And we also have Brady Hull from the Hull Show. Going to talk a little bit about Colorado State. He's a Colorado radio personality. And then we have Tim Shelton from Fresno State going to talk about their weekend split. So all kinds of guests. Going to be an awesome episode. We're going to kick it off and let Eli tell us a little bit about the Mountain West happenings. A lot going on. Do we have 2 bids or do we not? That's the first question.
Yeah, for sure. It's getting busy at the top. That upper, I guess, quartet you could say: Boise State, Utah State, San Diego State, and Colorado State. They've kind of emerged into that group up top, and it's been really fun to see them battle out in a lot of these games. I'm most curious. I spoke about this yesterday on a radio show in Fresno, but I'm most curious to see how the scheduling impacts the race between those 4. Colorado State's already finished all of their series against those remaining 3 teams in that tier, so you can almost
split with all of them. So they have 3 quad 1 wins, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe it's still 3 quad 1 wins, it's a really big deal because those games that they lost, they won't be marked up as bad losses.
Right.
And to get 1 against each of those 3 teams, you sneak 1 out, and that does a lot for your resume. So I'm curious how that shakes out with the scheduling. Colorado State's kind of got the benefit of the doubt. On the opposite end, Boise State does not have the benefit of the doubt because they had a pretty front-loaded schedule. They had some of their, their weaker games up first, and it was able to gain some momentum that way. But now they're finishing up the season, which I believe they have maybe the 5 or 6 strongest teams in the standings to finish out the year. So that's going to be really tough for them. But they were able to bounce back against CSU. And I'm also curious with a couple of these postponements that we've had, there's a good chance that these teams might not wind up playing the same number of games. So you might have the top 4 could all have 4 losses, but if San Diego State has 1 more win or Boise State has 2 more, something like that, it would be interesting if a team that has the same number of losses to tie for first actually finishes 4th in the standings. That's a really big deal from a conference tournament standpoint. So I'm keeping track of those teams. They've been playing really good basketball. A lot of these series between them have been splits or at least closely contested matchups. So it's been a lot of fun. And, that middle tier and even that 3rd tier in the Mountain West has stepped up and played some really good basketball as well. Winning some of these games, sweeping some of the series. San Jose State now has its longest win streak since 2017. That's really cool to see in what's been just a bizarre year for them for a variety of reasons with COVID-19 and such. A lot of great basketball is being played in the Mountain West. And I know, we try to promote the conference and cover it in a positive light. And, this league, it hasn't been this deep and this competitive in a number of years that I've been following it. Most years you've had your team or top couple of teams at the top that kind of run away with the league a bit. San Diego State last year was a good example of that. Utah State emerged late in the season. But this season, it's been really competitive.
Right.
From top to bottom, it's been fun to watch a lot of these teams battle it out. I feel like the 2-game series has a lot to do with that.
Yep.
But overall, a lot of individuals and coaching staffs that have performed well in really unusual circumstances. So it's been a fun league to cover this season.
A lot of records have been broken as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think Boise State's broken the record for their conference start. I want to say the same with Utah State.
Yep.
You mentioned San Diego State just now. I think Colorado State's broken some individual records. Nevada's played really well when they're hot and going. They're going. When they're not, they're a dangerous team when it comes tournament time. That's that much is true. And we'll talk about Wyoming, who is one of the best scoring teams in the conference, one of the best three-point shooting teams in the conference. We compliment Coach Linder and his staff all the time on this show, and they've done a really great job in year one. So they're right there in the middle of the pack, along with Fresno State, who's coming off a weekend's sweep. So a lot of exciting basketball still to be played. We're going to bring in our first guest. We need to get the drum roll ready. We're going to bring in Wyoming assistant Kenny DeWeese. KD, what up,
guys?
How's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Like the drum roll. I know you like the drum roll.
I appreciate it. It's not necessarily warranted, but I appreciate it.
We have pretty high level effect here, if you haven't noticed. we do it big. But I do have one for you. Hold on, let's see. Bam.
Ooh.
There's the man right there.
That's impressive.
Let's go.
Well, and then we got the mountains in the background. I feel like I'm over about 20 miles west in the snowy mountains, so it's nice. We're right at home.
It's Mountain West Insider. It's not a game over here. No
Clearly.
No games being played. So, incredible job at Northern Colorado from start to finish in your tenure there with Coach Linder. Now it leads to somewhat of a dream job, I would imagine, to be back in the Mountain West. He used to be an associate head coach at Boise State. He's very familiar with the league. You guys are familiar with building a program from scratch. What things from Northern Colorado and that process that you guys built and had so much success? I think you won the CIT, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Champions early on in your tenure. So what things did you take from that experience that you are now using at Wyoming?
I think the biggest thing, and we're very much in the process of getting there and have a long way to go, is trying to build a real team and a real program. And the foundation on which that's built on is ultimately going to be defense for us. And that's what, and Coach Linder, as amazing as he is of an offensive mind, and we're really good offensively this year in a lot of ways. One of the most things that we did the best at Northern Colorado in the 4 years there was we were top 50 in defensive efficiency in 3 out of our 4 years. And a lot of people just think about Jeff Linder as an offensive guy and the threes and the ball screen stuff and things like that. But defensively, we were one of the best teams in the country. And I think 2 out of our 4 years were the best team in the country at limiting opponents' percentage of points that come from threes, 3-point attempts, and also limiting opponents' assisted baskets. So that's one of our biggest problems right now. Why I don't want to say we're underachieving, because I don't believe we are in a lot of ways, but why we're kind of, like you said, we're a middle of the pack team right now, and will be until we get this fixed. Is we've got to continue to set that defensive foundation, because offensively we're going to recruit offensive players that fit the way we want to play, guys that can shoot the basketball, guys that have high IQ, high feel. But now getting those guys to understand and buy into the importance of how hard you have to play every possession, every pass, and how well you have to defend and how few mistakes you can afford to make.
Do you get the sense going from the Big Sky now to the Mountain West, going from traditionally a one-bid league to now a multi-bid league, do you find that there is maybe a heightened importance on the defensive side now that, a lot of these teams can score offensively?
Yeah, no matter what league you're in, defense is important. And the best defensive teams are going to usually be the teams, towards the top half or third of the league. And that's rung true in every league and every job I've worked at, I believe. But with all that being said, too, the difference is in a league like the Mountain West, and this is no slight towards the Big Sky or other leagues, but the Mountain West has, you look at the last 2 years, we've had seven NBA draft picks in the last 2 seasons in a league like this. You have excellent coaches. You have and not just guys that are good X and O coaches, but program builders and guys that value winning culture, and not just X's and O's and things like that. And you have a play like for us this past weekend. I mean, we went to San Diego State and got, for lack of a better term, absolutely obliterated. It was brutal. But for our guys to see that, I mean, San Diego State is the standard in this league, and has been for quite some time. And they have, going back to Steve Fisher and Coach Dutcher working for him, and they have basically 20 years of culture and values and habits built into that program that we're trying to establish in the past 6 to 8 months. So, but no, I mean, as far as to answer your question, the talent level in this league and the coaching in this league is as good as any league in the country. And I think you see that respect level by the NBA with the guys that are getting drafted, the top level players getting drafted, and guys that are playing too, not just getting drafted, but that are playing on NBA rosters right now. So, it's always a challenge, and we feel like a lot of our values that we had in Northern Colorado, even though it's the Big Sky and what many consider would be a lesser league by a lot of standards, is those things travel and those things translate to any level. When we go play, on the road at West Virginia or on the road at Oklahoma or Butler, all those bye games you have to play in a league like the Big Sky, those things gave us a chance to compete and have a chance to win. Playing Northern Iowa last year, who was a top 25 program, and having the last shot to win it in regulation and going down to the last possession in overtime. So.
Yeah, Coach, well said. I'm curious, you guys have had some success early in the league and early in preseason, and we'll talk about your roster a little bit in a second. But in particular, what are you guys excited about, or can you celebrate behind closed doors or with your team or as a coaching staff that you've already been able to establish? You guys are I think Eli has a great stat. He's the analytical guy here, as you can imagine. I think you guys were, if I'm not mistaken, in the below or above 300 in offense last year, and you guys are around 88 now. So what can you celebrate that you're excited about so far in this process of building?
Probably the biggest thing is just the macro side of it. It's like actually winning the games. Unfortunately in Wyoming, and this is no slight towards the previous staff, but like there just wasn't a lot of winning the last couple of years. And there has been, if you go back 3, 4, 5 years, of course, but the last two, it's been down. And so now instead of finding ways to lose, we've been trying to find ways to win. Yep. And I think that from the macro view, that's been the biggest thing. And like kind of that bird's eye view of looking at the big picture. I think, unfortunately, as good as we've been in a lot of ways offensively, and whatever our offensive efficiency ranking is, the problem is I only look at our defensive efficiency ranking, and I believe we're in like the 340s, if I'm not mistaken. And that's, for us, is unacceptable. And that's one reason why we're not winning more right now, or at least being even more competitive. So, right. Just going forward with that, I mean, I think just really just getting wins and right. Guys learning how to win. Even though a lot of the games early on in non-conference maybe shouldn't have been what you would think would be close games, right? Against some of the opponents, and no offense to those guys, but those games have been lost in the last couple of years, and now just let's get over the hump and win those games. Right.
Real quick before I pass to Eli, you have a really sensational freshman that's getting a lot of buzz. He is by far leaps and bounds ahead for the race of freshman of the year in this conference, which, if you look at guys who have won that award in this conference, they're significant players. You look at Isaiah Stevens, who won it last year, another point guard from Texas. I happen to be from Texas. You're from Texas, so I'm biased in this part of the conference.
Are we all biased from Texas?
Man, biased as can be. But he's a guy that you guys signed at Northern Colorado, and now here he is in the Mountain West. And you had a little bit of a battle to make sure that he came to Wyoming because his recruitment, he played so well during the year. Talk a little bit about him and how he's been as far as on your team and what you love about what he's done so far. And then tell us a little bit about the rest of your roster that you're excited about.
Yeah. Well, let's start with Marcus to answer your question. He has had a fantastic year so far. The thing with him is he's nowhere near a finished product. I mean, there's so much room for growth for him on both ends of the floor. I think he's figuring out still how hard you have to compete possession to possession defensively, how much possessions matter offensively as far as making the easy play and the right play and taking care of the ball. But I mean, his ability to read defenses quickly, to find guys and see guys, he can see stuff that other guys can't see. When he's really, really good, which he has been at times this year, he makes the game really easy offensively for the other four guys in the court. He just kind of, as long as those guys are moving and reacting and ready to cut and play off his drives and play off his ball screens, those guys, it's really easy for them to get layups, open threes. I mean, he just draws so much attention. Starting to shoot the ball a lot better. Once we've gotten to league play, kind of struggled a little bit in the non-conference, been a little bit up and down, but he's a very capable shooter. But, he's a freshman, and sometimes those guys have to figure out good shot, bad shot, and things like that. And also the ball's in his hand a lot, late shot clock. So he ends up, his percentage is probably a little bit lower than normal. But no, we're excited about him. We love who he's going to be. We love who he is right now. He's growing every day and getting better every day. And like I said, I mean, his best basketball is still well in front of him. And then when you add to that, just the whole freshman class, we're really excited about that. I mean, Jeremiah Oden started a bunch of games early, helped us win some games, had a great game at Oregon State in that win in Corvallis, and actually had a really good game in game 2 at San Diego State in about 16 minutes. I want to say he had 11 points and a few rebounds, like 4 rebounds. So, he's got a lot of potential, and he's still trying to figure out how he fits and what he does well and things like that. But, you add in Graham Ike, who has just started playing the last 4 or 5 games, coming off a torn ACL last year, senior in high school. And he's a problem on the block now. He's a problem. Like, he's a guy that you can throw it to on the block with his back to the basket, and he can go get a bucket. And he's a competitor, and he's tough, and he's physical. He's still trying to get back into shape and figure all that stuff out. But, like, we're so excited about him. And then probably the last freshman, too, would be Xavier Dussel from Phoenix, Arizona, was up and down early and really, had a big kind of, I guess you could say, almost like coming out party at Oregon State, and defended their best guard, Ethan Thompson, really well to help us down the stretch and win that game. And X is he's kind of become our defensive stopper, which is crazy to say for a freshman. Like, he's just kind of taken on the role and is just going out and fighting the other team's best player every possession. And now he's really shooting the ball well. I mean, I'm not sure what he's at right now after San Diego State, but he was over 50% from the 3, and his scoring has gone up, and he's playing really well right now. So that group of 4 of those freshman guys, we're really, really excited about where they're going. And we got really good returners, and a guy like Quan Marble had so much success last year's Mountain West tournament, who's been playing well for us. And can't not mention Hunter Maldonado, who's been an all-league type performer here, who's just as solid as they come. Hunter Thompson is a weapon at a 6'10", pick and pop 5. It's been up and down a little bit shooting the ball this year, but you go out to Fresno in game 1, he goes 7 for 8 from the 3 and helps us win that game. So we're excited about all those guys, man. Drake Jeffries is a JUCO transfer that's had some big games shooting the 3. It's a sniper. He's a guy that you have to worry about defensively if you're the opponent. So, it's trying to put it all together and mesh some young guys that this is their first college basketball experience with a bunch of older guys who have played a lot, even the sophomores. And I don't want to forget, just because he hadn't been playing, Kenny Foster got hurt against game 2 in Nevada. Yep. And man, like Kenny had unfortunately been a little bit up and down this year, but the Air Force game 2, Nevada game 1, Nevada game 2 prior to his injury was like something just clicked for him, man. And he just was coming on and figuring out how to be the guy we need him to be to help us win games. And it's that injury actually in so many ways has really, really hurt us, because he really had figured it out. It's crazy to see, some games he was here and some games he's here and he's up and down, but like something clicked after Air Force game 1 when we lost, which hurt us, and we had to regroup from that. Something clicked with him, and like he just made us significantly better by doing all the little things. So we're really missing him right now.
And it takes time. I mean, it takes time to adjust to a new staff, and let's be honest, it's been a most unpredictable year we've ever seen.
Yeah, no question. That's a understatement.
Yeah, to his credit, I mean, it's like, okay, now I'm getting used to this thing, and he's starting to figure out. Unfortunately, got hurt. I got to add one more in there that you picked up at the semester, another Texas kid.
Yeah.
that people may not know about, and then I'll let Eli take over.
Yeah, so Brendan Wenzel transferred a few weeks ago from University of Utah, and is most likely going to have to continue to sit out this semester. Obviously, the one-time transfer stuff, everybody's assuming that's going to go through, so he'd be eligible in the fall. We would love to get a waiver for him or something right now, but those things are in the works, and we'll see if it happens. But my guess is that probably not, and we're not counting on it. But we're excited to have him. He's a bigger guard that's about 6'6", and can really, really shoot the ball, knows how to play. He's just a really good fit for what we do. And we recruited him hard at Northern Colorado, know him well, know his family, know what he's about. And he's going to be a really good fit at the University of Wyoming going forward.
One of the keys for me when I was assessing this team in the preseason, during transitions, especially in the Mountain West and some of these conferences, when there is a transition at head coach, oftentimes it does mean that the roster has a transition as well. But Wyoming, fortunately, has had, Hunter Thompson returning, Hunter Maldonado returning, Quan Marble, as you mentioned. Have you seen those three, with a number of newcomers coming in? A lot of these guys are freshmen adjusting to Division I basketball. Have you seen that trio maybe take on more of a leadership role for this year's team to kind of make it all mesh together?
Yeah, they have. And the tough part for them, I think it'd have been a lot easier to do that without the coaching change, obviously. So not only are they having to adjust to a little bit different roles of having a bunch of younger guys and new guys, almost 2/3 of your roster being new, and a number of those guys being freshmen. So they're having to adjust to that sort of older guy role, veteran role, and how to help those guys assimilate and get into college basketball, but also having to deal with a whole new staff that plays very different and does a lot of different things. So, I think it's been challenging for those guys. And I think we appreciate how hard they've tried, and, they're really working to try and do what we ask them to do and trying to change some of the things. You have a new staff, there's changes. There's different protocols and way of doing things and expectations, and they've worked really hard to try and meet those expectations.
How has the team as a whole adjusted to playing during COVID-19? I know a lot of the different teams in this conference have had different experiences, but how has your team and your staff adjusted to this?
I don't know that we still have adjusted. I don't know that anybody has. In a lot of ways, it feels like Groundhog's Day. You just kind of in your own little world and own little bubble with your team and your staff. And, and first of all, like I say, like any hardships that we're dealing with and challenges that we're dealing with is nothing compared to a lot of people in the real world. And how many people have lost their lives and things like that, and lost jobs and homes and all the terrible things that have been a result of the pandemic. But just in our own little bubble, fortunately for us being in Laramie and not being in a bigger city, I think it's been a little bit easier for our guys to be disciplined, and they've done an incredible job because there's just not as many things to do and as many people around to compromise your bubble. But I feel for these dudes, man. You're not getting to have a normal freshman experience for those freshmen, just college, dorm, all the things that you want to do as a freshman, even if you're a basketball player. And then the guys that are kind of towards the end of their career, like Thompson and Maldonado, that don't get to, kind of go out those last couple of years as an older guy in a program, and that whole college experience, much less the basketball side of it. But right. So that being said, it's been a challenge for everybody in the country, and I'm excited we're just even getting to play games. And we've been fortunate that the only thing we've missed is the UNLV series, which we would have opened up conference play with, and that's been our only postponement or cancellation.
Eli, you know how we like to end. We got to unfortunately let Coach DeWeese go. He'll be back at some point, and they'll keep doing big things. We look forward to watching. Appreciate him being on, and shout out to Coach Linder and Coach Wicks and Coach Vanderveer. Yeah, Coach B. So yeah, we'll make sure to have a lot of the Wyoming staff. We got to give them shout out, and when you come back, you have to tell us about the staff, or we'll have a different member back. But Eli, you know I would like to close, so I'll let you lead the way.
That's right. Yeah. So as we always like to close with our guests, we put you on the spot. What is one maybe funny or entertaining story that you have at any point during your coaching days?
Oh gosh, man, there's
On the
There's
spot.
so many. Yeah.
Come on,
That's
Dewey.
that's
In
a
the
tough
hot
one,
seat.
man. Most of the best ones are probably not best told in the public forum.
Hold on.
I don't have.
We got a comment, so that'll at least
All right.
that'll give it at least a little bit of time. We got a comment. Hold on, let's get it. See if
I
we
don't
can
have
get
any great ones, man. I will. I'll tell Miss China hello, man. She's the best.
Shout out to
She's
Daryl
awesome.
Rising Coaches, Executive Director of DI Alliance. So we had to give shout out. He had to give shout out to China Ju.
She's one of our administrators in the athletic department. She's big time.
She is that.
Nah, so oh gosh, man. All right, I'll tell y'all a really embarrassing but funny story. I'll be trying to be quick. So this is from when I was a kid, though. I was a kid, not coaching it. And Eli, you don't know me, but my dad is a just recently retired college basketball coach. So when he was coaching McLennan Community College in Waco, Texas, this was probably when I was about 10 years old. We were playing Temple Junior College, which was kind of a big rivalry, and I guess still is in a lot of ways. And didn't lose to Temple very often, but lost in Temple on the road. And my big deal was especially at Temple, man, because they left the ball rack out when the game was over. So I was getting shots up. And I was out there playing and running around, and my dad was not happy about losing to Temple because they didn't lose to him very much. And you know how it is for a guy that's a gym rat, like one more shot. Well, he's like, all right, one more shot. We're about to leave. Well, I took one more shot and they left. And so I was riding back on the bus home with him, and he said, all right, man, we're taking off without you. He took the team and left, and I was there and kind of realized that I'd been left after a while. And luckily the radio guy was still in the building and realized that I'd also been left. And so I ended up having to take a long ride home with our radio guy at the time. And I learned a valuable lesson about, when somebody says it's time to go, it's time to go. So it's a bad indictment on my dad, and Burton knows my dad pretty well too. So I don't mean to kind of put him on the spot right now. That's one of the funniest things that ever happened to me. It wasn't funny at the time when I was like 8 years old, but it was pretty funny.
I like it. Shout out to OG Deweese, the retired.
How many
games did he win? Because you used to go by, when you're on the same staff, you were Kenny, and now you're Ken. You've graduated in this thing.
I'm trying to bask in some of his spotlight, but no, he ended up winning like over 800 as a college coach, and then a couple hundred as a high school coach as well.
It's a lot of games.
A lot of games, man. He's really old.
Well, we won't leave you, but we'll actually tell you that we're going to go, and then you'll know that you're going to go this time. We do have one more.
Sounds good.
One more comment from one of your peoples.
Go Pokes.
We got Papa Wenzel on the feed. So, but thanks for coming, man. Good luck the rest of the way. Stay safe, and tell the staff we said hello, and we look forward to having you back, man.
Appreciate it, guys, and appreciate the platform and what you guys do. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Ken.
Kenny Deweese, shout out. I can still call him Kenny because I know I'm from Texas. Great stuff there from the inside of Wyoming. We always let Eli break down our guests and what they talked about before we bring on the next one. Next, we have some Colorado State spotlight coming, but before that, we'll review Wyoming.
Yeah, the two border war teams, Wyoming's been off to a strong start this season. There are a number of reasons why I had the Cowboys labeled as my dark horse entering into the year. Marcus Williams has been just phenomenal as a freshman. And, as Ken said, I think the game is going to slow down for him. And as good as he's been so far, I think the sky is still the limit for him to be, maybe their version of Justin James or, someone that's like that position for Wyoming. And, they've had so many elite guards come through that program. I think he's next in line there. But offensively, they're so much more improved than they were last season. A lot of credit to the new staff that is coming and doing just a really great job with these newcomers. It's still such a young team, and I think it's the reason why, kind of as Ken said, they're going to probably drop some games or at least have close games against teams that they should handle. It's just a case of an environment that is usually pretty tough to play, going up at elevation and playing in Laramie. That's traditionally a tough place to play. But now with no fans, it's a very different situation. But all that being said, I think Wyoming's ahead of schedule right now. They're already in kind of that middle tier of the conference. with so many of these guys not only adjusting to playing during COVID, but also just adjusting to playing Division I basketball. And even the older guys, as he mentioned, they're adjusting to playing with the new staff. So it's a lot of different things going on, and to still put up a number of wins as they've had after last season, where wins are incredibly hard to come by. I think it's been a really impressive start for Wyoming, and this thing is only going to grow, and we know what Linder and his staff can do.
Yep, absolutely. And we talked about the border war, so that's coming up. So right on time, we have Colorado radio host of the whole show, Brady Hull. So we'll bring him in the studio. Brady, what up, man?
Hey, Brady.
Guys, how are you? Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. We don't know everything that goes on in the whole show, but before we get to that, talk about this Colorado State team, man. Quad 1 wins. Got everybody back for next year, year 3. You've obviously talked to head coach Nico Medvedev. What do you find in this new team, and what's some of your thoughts?
Hey, first off, I don't even know everything that goes on with the whole show. You're all good. Nico Medved, he's such a unique coach. I think he's perfect for. I think we're going to start seeing a trend like this nationally too. He's tough when he needs to be. A lot of times I get him on the show, and he sounds like neighborhood guy that you can be best friends with. But you see him in practice, you see him in a game, and he knows how to get after it. He's just a great guy. He's a great motivator, and they really get behind him. They buy into what he's selling. And just talking to the players, I mean, they sound a lot like him when they're on the show. We had David Roddy on last week, and you wouldn't know that this guy just went and dropped 27 points and had so many rebounds. You'd have no clue, because he's just so humble about it, and that's how the entire team operates. And that's why they have this never quit attitude too. And that's what's so fun to watch with this Rams team is they just find ways. They're in it together. And, of course, starts with Coach Medved there. But, man, I think they're so far ahead of schedule. It's amazing to see the growth. I mean, here they are contending for a regular season title at this stage, and it's only his third year with Colorado State. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think a lot of people kind of get the sense that CSU is probably a bit ahead of schedule now. It's still such a young team, no seniors on the roster. A lot of these guys are either freshmen or sophomores. What have you seen maybe out of this year's team that kind of differentiates itself from what they accomplished last season?
Well, what's interesting is it's not a surprise anymore. Last year we were all some of the deep insiders will tell you they weren't surprised, but I'm always surprised. So I mean, they're no longer the young guys. We still call them the super softs with Isaiah Stevens and David Roddy. But what I am kind of surprised with is we were talking a lot last week about Boise State's depth, and they're an extremely deep team. And with CSU, you thought, okay, they're kind of deep, but not close to what Boise State has. We're starting to see different guys. Yeah, Roddy might be the big score guy. Isaiah Stevens might take over one night, but you're seeing Deshaun Thomas came in against Boise State and also Utah State and came up with some big shots in a bunch, within a couple of minutes. And you see the same thing with John Tonje. Any given night, you're starting to feel like there's going to be another big time contributor. So that's been my takeaway this season is I knew we were going to get something special from Roddy and Stevens, but this is a pretty deep group. And again, as we all talk about, they all should be back next year, which only means huge things for Colorado State.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, at least from my perspective, the leap that they've taken defensively has been a huge surprise to me. Heading into the year, the main proponent of this team was their perimeter shooting and the ability to get up and down. But defensively, if I'm not mistaken, they're now technically more efficient on the defensive side than the offensive side. What are maybe some individuals who have stood out on that end, and how do you think this team has kind of bought into the defensive side?
Well, yeah, you talk about defense. Boise State was averaging 81 before that first game they played. They held them to 56 points. They're just aggressive. They're constantly moving around. They're talking so well. They're communicating. And that, Coach Medved preaches that. He pushes that. He doesn't want just individual defensive players. He wants guys that are communicating and talking. But David Roddy one-on-one, I mean, we talk about his stats. We talk about his rebounds and his points. Defensively, I mean, you could put him up against anybody. So we see that with 5 guys on the floor. You guys know this better than I do. 5 guys on the floor. If you have one guy that doesn't know where they're supposed to be, where they're supposed to recover, what they're supposed to say, it's going to throw off the entire defense. And that's what I noticed, especially when they're down, when they're coming back. You just see a light switch. Even going back to the Utah State series, game 1, Coach Medved talked about it. They just weren't there defensively. They weren't communicating. Next night, completely different story. So I think, yes, physically they have all the right tools to play outstanding team defense, but it's their communication. It's knowing when to recover, who to take. I mean, even just little things out there on the floor. That's what I've noticed the most. But yeah, you're right. That defense, we always look at the points. We look at this and that as far as rebound totals, but holding a team that averages 81 points to 56 is phenomenal. So yeah, you're exactly right. This defense is a blast to watch.
Do you get the sense that, I mean, maybe this team is somehow benefited in a way from having this 2-game series? I understand they've now played each of the 3 teams from that, upper quadrant, if you want to call it that, and they've been able to split each of those series. Do you get the sense that maybe they're able to maybe adjust on the fly a little bit better than some teams, or is there some sort of advantage in that sense?
I don't know. It depends on who you ask, because when you ask coaches or players that question, they say they hate the 2 games. I love it as a fan, man. It feels like a mini NBA playoffs. So I absolutely love it. But coaches will tell you, yeah, if you win game 1, game 2 is going to be just extremely tough coming back. And if you lose game 1, yeah, you feel pretty good about it. So I guess it kind of depends. But yeah, as far as the advantage go, if you're a Rams fan, you kind of feel like the hard work is done looking back to Utah State, Boise State, San Diego. And that's not to take anything. This Wyoming series, I love Jeff Linder. That could be very interesting too. But just looking at the standings and looking at the records and what the national guys think about this conference, yeah, you do kind of get the sense that getting these games early in the split, kind of back to back, has to be a benefit, at least for where they are at this stage. And who knew that going in? I mean, I don't know if any of us knew quite how teams would handle this, but to say the Rams split with all 3 of those teams, I think you got to walk away feeling really good about your situation.
And with this team, what do you sense is maybe not like a dream situation, but how do you see the rest of the season unfolding in a way that, would maybe check some of the boxes that the CSU staff has?
I think they're thinking about winning that. They've never won a regular season Mountain West title, regular season. I think they're thinking about that. And the best thing for the Rams, they have to keep. They take care of their business. They'll be fine because Boise State and Utah State still have to play. Boise State's tough portion of the schedule is coming up in the next few weeks. And again, not to take anything away from some of these other teams, but we all know what we're looking at as far as records. So if Colorado State, the big thing for them is, and I don't want to call them trap games necessarily, but yeah, there was a stretch there where it was Utah State, Boise State, well, now Wyoming with the rival. They just have to be careful. And even though I can say it, hey, maybe the hard work's done, they can't go that route. They have to look at it, and because if they take care of their schedule, they're going to be right there in the thick of things.
Right. So last 2 things. Tell us about the whole show. What goes on it? And I know you don't know all of it, but tell us about the show, and then tell us one funny story from a guest before you leave.
Okay, from a guest. Okay, yeah, the whole show. So we're based in Northern Colorado. We don't get away from talking pro sports. We definitely talk Nuggets, Broncos, Rockies. I'm going to try to jump in on that press conference today. That should be interesting.
Good luck.
What questions will be asked there, or better yet, what answers. But we talk a lot of Colorado State. We talk University of Northern Colorado, the station that I'm with, KFKA, 1310 KFKA. We're the voice of the Bears, so I have a great relationship with former Bears coach and Jeff Linder. Yeah. Even though he's on the dark side now, no, we have a great relationship with him. So we talk a lot of college. We talk pros, and we try to bring a lot of coaches and guests and players on the program too. So it's a mix. And then plus I tell a lot of good jokes. At least
tell us one. End us with one.
Well, they're all knock jokes, man. I mean, my wife doesn't like it anymore, but I try to tell them.
We haven't had a knock joke yet, so you feel free.
Well, now you put me on the spot. Well, you said you wanted to hear a funny story. Can I tell about a coach that we had? Can I name former coaches? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Well, so before Nico Medved, of course, Larry Eustace.
Yes.
A very interesting interview, and one of the craziest thing. I'm getting him on first. I mean, this was years ago. So I'm scared to death because it's Larry Eustace. It's an intimidating coach. And so I'm bringing him on. I'm nervous. I got all my notes ready to go. I start breaking into asking him questions. And it was right before Colorado State was playing the Buffs. So it's a big game, right? Playing Colorado. And so I start asking him questions, and he interrupts. He doesn't let me finish my question. And he says, this is the first time I had him on. And he says, well, clearly this must be a big game because you've never even asked me to be on your program before. On the air. And I'm thinking, I've only had the show for a little bit, but here we go. So we're still talking, and I start asking him more questions. He doesn't want to go that route. I start asking him about X's and O's and stats and all that stuff, and he cuts me off and says, I can't talk about all that, but I can tell you about a TV show that I'm watching right now, and it's called The Good Wife, I think. Have you guys heard of that? No. So that's from now on, whenever I had him on at the show, I always opened with what's happening with The Good Wife, because I open him up as far as the conversation goes. So I was like, I'm not going to talk basketball with you, man. We're going to talk about TV. What are you watching now? Coach Mike is the complete opposite. You could ask him anything, and he's going to play along. So yeah, that's one of my more bizarre ones. I'm sure we have other ones, but that for Colorado State. That's what came to mind.
I love it. I love it. Well, thanks so much, Brady, for coming on, man. We look forward to tuning in. How do people tune into your show? Tell us that real quick.
Yeah, so it's 1310 KFKA. If you're in northern Colorado, Greeley, Fort Collins, Loveland area, you can pick us up 1310 KFKA. If you're outside of the area, you can stream us online 1310kfka.com, and you can listen live there anytime. So and we have our podcasts available there at that website or my website, thewholeshow.com. There's a lot you can get to, and we try to have fun. That's the big thing. I don't take myself too seriously, but man, you guys are awesome. I love being on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, man. We appreciate you giving us some insight, and I'm sure it won't be the last time. So appreciate it again.
I love it, guys. Keep up the great work, and appreciate you both.
Yeah,
thanks so much, Brady.
Be safe out there. All right, let's see what Eli's breakdown is. We had an awesome guest. We don't have a lot of radio personalities that are hosts, but give us your breakdown. He definitely had some great stuff on too.
Yeah, well, the Eustace story is hilarious, and it's he's quite the personality, and his legacy definitely still lives on with the CSU program. But as far as this year's Rams team, it's been a really entertaining brand of basketball that they've played, and I think the focus for me with this team right now, as Brady pointed out, is they've played the three teams at the top of the standings, and so that's kind of a big deal from that perspective to split those series, but as he mentioned, it's a deep and really strong conference. You can't sleep on that the other tiers of this league, and one bad night can mean the world of a difference between getting that large bid or sitting at home on Selection Sunday. So a really talented team that I think has been impressive defensively, where they've shown major strides. I don't think anyone could have imagined that they'd actually rank higher on the defensive side than the offensive side heading into the year, based on the skill set of a lot of these guys. But the present is bright, and the future might be even brighter with a lot of these players still being sophomores and freshmen. A lot of positive strides so far of the CSU program. So it's been a fun Rams team to cover, and I think the future is certainly looking in the right direction for them.
Yep, absolutely. We're going to switch gears and go to the West Coast. We're going to go out to Fresno, California, where they're coming off of a sweep here recently and have played some good basketball, and looking forward to having former Mountain West player Tim Shelton on our as our next guest. So we're gonna bring him in the studio. Tim, what up, man?
Hey, Tim.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Doing well, man. How about you?
Oh man, I'm doing well. I'm fortunate. Obviously, this has been quite the experience for everyone involved, and being able to prepare, to help your guys grow and continue the journey. So I'm glad to be here, glad to be on the show, glad to be coming off a win.
I was coming off 2 wins, Coach. 2.
I take it game by game.
Hey, but it's 2 in a row, Coach. It's a lot different than just one. We know that. So before we get to Fresno State, is there any player at San Diego State now who's better than you?
Oh, man, all those guys are better than me right now.
Better than you were, Coach. You were a really good player at San Diego State. Real quick, before we talk about your coaching career, tell a little bit about your playing career at San Diego State, who you played with, what was your experience like, the Mountain West, and now you're coaching it.
I got to San Diego State in 2007. Was fortunate to play with a lot of good players. I had my share of injury trouble, knee trouble, but I don't feel like it limited me from being able to still compete and ultimately, be a part of some special groups. DJ Gay is who I came in with, my freshman year, who ended up being the first ballot Hall of Fame guy, 4-year starter. The big names would be Kawhi Leonard. He came in my sophomore year, Jamal Franklin as well. And then Xavier Thames, those guys ended up getting drafted and who I played with. So part of some good times there, got to see it develop. I was there before it was, sold out season after season, and it was a part of a special 34-3 win group. Was coached by the legendary Steve Fisher, as well as Brian Desher, the current head coach, who's doing a wonderful job. And Dave Velasquez actually hosted me on my official visit. So, a lot of good history and memories there. Really proud of what those guys have been able to accomplish, since we've left as well. But, I'm an Aztec, but right now I'm obviously a Bulldog. So,
right.
It's been a fun process.
So you're from the area, the Valley, they call it.
Yeah.
You're from the Valley. You were at San Diego State with your head coach, Coach Hudson, who's a tremendous head coach and tremendous man. And you made the move from your alma mater to come back home with your teammate, in a sense, your staff teammate, in a sense. And in year one, you guys kind of blow the doors off, probably exceeded a lot of expectations. Talk a little bit about just the process of coming in, new program, doing what you guys were able to do early on. And then now, of course, naturally you had a lot of seniors on that team. Right. And now you're having to kind of regenerate what you have. And you have a lot of young, talented prospects, especially Orlando Robinson, who's probably the best front court player in the conference. So just talk a little bit about the entire journey, the special year in year one, kind of the program building. And obviously we'll talk about Coach Hudson too.
Yeah. Justin Hudson obviously did a bang-up job at San Diego State. It created the opportunity for him to be here as the head coach. And I've known Coach Hud, man. I know Huddy for almost all my life, it feels like, since like the 4th grade, 5th grade. And, he was my high school coach until he left for the college ranks. And then I came to Fresno, ended up going to Clovis West High School, which I live a couple blocks away from right now. So I'm down the street from where I used to go. But coming here, it felt familiar, because of the city, because of the Valley. But also, we were familiar with the guys on the team, a guy, Deshaun Taylor, Sam Bittner, Nate Grimes. We had played against those guys before. So, we felt like we got to inherit some talent. And to those guys' credit, they really bought in, to what we were trying to do and who we were trying to be and the culture of what we were trying to develop. And ended up winning a lot of close games and having a successful, opening season, first season. That group, you win with men, and they were older, and they understood the process of practice and building good habits. They knew how to win. So I think, we were blessed to have those guys, and they did a wonderful job for us. You talk about age, and now I think we're 305 is our ranking in KenPom for experience. So we are dealing with the group that doesn't necessarily, seem young age-wise all the time, but in terms of their, impact in minutes and production on the floor, a lot of it is new to them, especially being a part of this program. And we're excited about this group. They continue to grow and mature and develop. And I think, that's all you can ask for, especially right now, with what everybody's trying to deal with is they come and bring it, and bring the right type of attitude and effort to what we're doing.
Yeah, I guess first takeaway from all this, you have a lot of newcomers on this team, a lot of guys who are still finding their way at Fresno State, whether they're freshmen or coming from different parts of the nation. How has that all kind of meshed together?
It's been good. There are times, obviously, when you get shut down, for COVID protocol, that you're kind of like you're bummed about the momentum you were building. We really like to do a defensive boot camp. That's a big 2-week period for us where we teach our concepts and we get a lot of mental reps in, as well as develop a certain level of toughness and understanding and what coach is looking for every day. I think not being able to have that time hurt us, but I think our guys trying to learn on the fly and really taking advantage of film. Coach is big on film anyway. But a lot of our guys, it's their first experience truly diving into film and watching themselves and being able to bring concepts together, and seeing themselves in short amounts of time, and then being able to prepare and kind of put that into action or put that into play when we go and compete has been, a good experience for everyone. And I'm excited about the growth, in terms of what we're dealing with and the time frame that we're dealing with.
Yes. Speaking of that, what has this been like? We asked a lot of the guests and the coaches on this show how their experience has been with dealing with COVID-19. How has your staff and how have your players adjusted to that?
It's fluid, so you control what you can control. I've heard a lot of people say that. I'm somebody who believes in that. Now that our guys are starting to say that, which is a good thing. You understand that they're listening, and that slow, steady drip is hitting them. So you build some momentum. I think you get maybe 15 practices with the entire group, before you're supposed to compete. And it's like, hey, let's figure out what we're doing. Let's make sure we're on the same page. Let's do our best to communicate, and let's play. I know you guys want to play, and everyone, is fortunate enough to get this year back. I think that's been a wonderful thing that the guys don't have to worry about. That allows them to be freed up a little bit in the same breath.
As far as some of the individuals on this team, the roster makeup's really interesting. You have Orlando Robinson, who is already one of the better big men in this conference. A lot of these transfers. I guess starting with Robinson, what have you seen out of his development now in year 2 and really showing a lot of positive strides?
He's always been a hard worker. One of the hardest workers I've been around. He's got that elite level work ethic, like a Kawhi, like a Jamal Franklin, like the guys that have really had success away from, college. And, last year, he was new on the scene. People were recognizing that he was talented, that he could score, that he could pass, that he was a skilled big man. This year, he's dealing with teams preparing for him. He's got that target on him. And I believe his maturity level has gone way up, and understanding that, I'm not always going to get certain looks, and the game's not going to just come to me. I have to make sure that I'm on top of my game. I have to understand the double teams are coming, where they're coming from, how to play with a little bit more poise, and recognize how to get my teammates involved and where to get my teammates involved, and that each decision holds that much more value, because of the target and the role that I play on this team. So, I've been really big on his maturity and showing him a lot of love for, how he approaches handling being the man this year. So,
and with guys like Deion Stroud and Isaiah Hill and a lot of these transfers coming in, what have you seen maybe in their game that's, possibly different now than when they started the season and were adjusting to the new scene?
With those two guys, Deion Stroud and Isaiah Hill, just getting more comfortable. Neither of them have played with a guy like Orlando, who can be instant offense, who can create a closeout for you. So the chemistry is continuing to develop. Those two guys, you watch them and, they've got a lot to their game. They haven't, I don't think they've necessarily even showcased, half of what they're capable of. And that part's exciting. They've expressed how happy they are to be back home. Isaiah Hill's from Bakersfield and Deion's from Fresno. So it's nice to have that level of talent and it be local guys coming back home and be excited about coming home. So, with those two, I'm really looking forward to bright things in their future for our program. And, they've been sponges. They've been trying to learn and do their best to understand, what we're asking and try to lead in that same breath.
And what do you maybe see out of this team that you feel good about? And maybe what is one or two things that you'd like to see the team improve in the last couple of weeks of the season?
We haven't always been the most consistent scoring group, and I feel like maybe our turnover rate is a little too high. But, hats off to our group for continuing to play defense. I think that's a sign of maturity when the ball's not going in and you continue to see a group stay together defensively and try to get stops, and keep that same level of energy and intensity and focus on a game plan. That's a big sign of maturity and a sign that we have a chance to win, and win big, with the group coming back. And the growth that they're making. So, big hats off to those guys, like guys Anthony Holland, Junior Ballard, those guys really compete, every single day, their ball doesn't go in, but they don't change their mindset on, I'm going to get a stop. I'm going to help finish this possession. I'm going to execute the game plan. I'm going to look my teammates and my coaches in the eye and give them confidence that I'm with them. So I think that's one of the big things that I've recognized that I've been proud of.
Coach, we always like to end with a funny story. You can tell us one about your San Diego State playing days, or you can tell us one about the time there in Fresno, anything in between. Just end us with one funny story from your playing or coaching career.
Oh, man. They've all been serious this year, I feel like. I laugh here or there, but the preparation process is real. I guess, our guys, this year are pretty funny. Like they catch on to some of Coach's sayings, or certain moments that Coach has if he decides to be sarcastic in a moment because, he wants to lighten the mood. So, when he's in film sessions, sometimes, he's going and, he might combine two guys' names or something like that, So, this year he combined Deion Stroud and Leo Colomario. Leo's one of our freshmen. Deion's obviously, new, but he's third year in college. So he called Leo Leon. And so in the locker room, you kind of hear the guy saying, Leon, where you going? Leon, what you doing? and who's like, what are they talking about? And they're just cracking jokes. And then Coach did it. They made a joke about it one morning of our shoot around. And then Coach actually called Leon in shoot around quickly. And our guys just start busting up laughing on the floor. So, they keep it light, but they also pay attention to what Coach says. And he has a gift for lightening the mood sometimes with his humor and with his sarcasm, but guys know that he's joking. So I think it's funny to see our guys kind of catch on to some of those things that are said and kind of flip it and make light of it in the locker room or on the floor sometimes. Yeah,
super important to be able to do that, especially in a year like this where there's just so much unpredictability and so much going on. It's just, it's a game we play that we all love, but if we can't have fun doing it in some kind of way, especially during times like this, then, it's probably not all the way worth it, man. But thanks so much, Tim, for coming on.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Stay safe, man, and best of luck the rest of the way.
You too.
Okay, Tim.
All right.
Yep, Tim Shelton there. We're going to bring in a head coach from San Jose State next. We'll let Eli give us his 1-minute breakdown on Fresno, and then we'll bring in Coach Prelo.
Yeah, they're coming off a sweep, some momentum building for that Fresno State program. And, I think we all kind of expected it would take a little bit of time. They're meshing a lot of newcomers, a lot of transfers, and some of the so-called experienced guys right now on this team are sophomores and juniors. So it was always going to take a little bit of time, but I feel like they're starting to hit their stride and play good basketball. And as to mention, with the defensive side, that's always a really important factor, especially in this conference, to get a lot of these newcomers and young guys focusing on the defensive side, I think is especially important. That's always going to be the case with the Justin Hudson team. They focus so heavily on defensive side of the basketball, but Fresno State, it's a team that has a lot of talent. It's a pretty flashy and athletic team to watch, and there's a lot of versatility on this roster. So I think the future is very bright for Fresno State, and it's always good to get the coach's perspective of what's going on behind the scenes a little bit. And it seems like it's a group that, really enjoys playing with one another, and they have a pretty good thing going.
Absolutely. And speaking of good things going, we're going to bring in a coach that's won coming off of a sweep. I believe 3 games in a row now for San Jose State on the win column. And just recently, yesterday was announced that they had the player of the week in the Mountain West. So without further ado, we'll bring in San Jose State's head coach. Coach Pre, how you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Good morning.
Coach.
Good morning, man.
How's it going?
Thanks so much for joining in with us, man. We're excited to have you. So yeah, you guys have gotten hot here of late. You started out conference playing the team that's number 1 in the conference and lost by 1 in a really impressive game and showed some great flashes. And then you put it together this last 3 games. Talk a little bit about your team. Talk a little bit about this last run and just kind of how this year's gone so far.
This year's been very interesting to say the least for everyone. And I think, the 3-game swing that we've had, our team has really come together. I've talked about this plenty of times and on my tweets and stuff like that when we do our post-game interviews. that our team is depleted, which most people know that now. And what makes the 3-game swing very interesting is that, we were still able to come together despite not having, a lot of our players. The guys have come together. We've always been a pretty close group. I think we're even closer now with the team. And our guys just believe. They believe in what we're doing. They believe in our vision, and they're playing together. And that's what you need when you're going through adversity. And we do have some talent. We have guys that can shoot the ball and make shots. I know our numbers don't look great right now if you look at our field goal percentage and our 3-point field goal percentage. But I've always said if and when we shoot the ball, I think we're a pretty dangerous team. And I think it came to light when we played Boise State several weeks ago in our second game. They put a good beating on us the first game, and it was a quick turnaround. I think we played them on a Thursday and then Saturday, and then the Saturday game came down to the last possession, and we basically had a chance to win the game. And a large part of that was because we shot the ball well and we didn't turn the ball over. So I think when you're looking deeper into the numbers, I think if we shoot it well and we don't turn the ball over, I think we're a really dangerous team.
Yeah, absolutely, Coach. Talk about your player of the week. Ralph is senior, if I'm not mistaken. He's played really, really well, averaged 19 and 9. Talk about him specifically leading the way in this charge this last week.
Yeah, Ralph's been consistent most of the year. He's shooting well over 50% right now, which is great. We're playing inside out with him. I think he's doing a great job. And I think, being player of the week was just a result of what he's done all year long. He's been a leader on the court with our younger post players and our entire team. He's a very vocal player, and I think he's a vocal leader. And again, like, we're playing through him, even though Richard Washington has been on fire, but he's been out due to injury. But Ralph has been playing really well for us inside. He's finishing at the rim. We've kind of opened up the floor a little bit to allow some driving angles for our guards, which then allows him to kind of get free in the paint area. So he's done a really good job for us.
And what have you seen out of this team during this recent winning streak? I understand the rotation's now a lot shorter, only 6 guys in that second Air Force game. How has the team adjusted to, as you said, the roster's depleted now, but now playing the best basketball of the season? What's been kind of the key or the story behind that?
I think the key is just, I've kind of gone with some veterans, and I think we have a group of guys that are playing a lot. We do have one freshman that's in the rotation, which is Sebastian Mendoza, but for the most part, the rest of the guys that are getting most of the minutes are veteran players. And we're talking about guys that have been here with me, and they've seen and they've been through a lot. They've been through a lot of close games, which you guys referenced in the beginning of this segment with San Diego State last year. I mean, they hit a 30-footer to beat us at their place last year. And, there's a lot of heartache. And I think the guys that are playing right now understand our league. They're playing harder. They understand the value of taking care of the ball. They understand the value of every single possession counts. And having veteran players, whether they're starters or not, just having veteran players that have gone through it in terms of our league is extremely important.
And since you mentioned it, the 2-game series has been such a unique aspect to this season's schedule. I still believe that the Boise State series is the largest point differential swing in 2 games in all of college basketball this year. What has this been like for not only your coaching staff, but also your players to adjust to this 2-game series?
Well, I don't think it's much of an adjustment. Basketball's basketball. Whether it's going to be Boise on Thursday and then we travel to go play New Mexico, I think we're past that in terms of all the things that we've had to deal with and all the players around the country in terms of COVID protocols, travel here, be safe, wear a mask, dealing with your protocols at your school and in your county. I mean, there's so many things, different practice venues. And I'm not going away from your question, I'm just trying to put this in context in terms of a back-to-back game against the same team it's still just basketball. Whether you're playing the same team twice or not, like our mental state with our players is just about, can we even get to the next game, with all the things that all the players have to deal with. And thank goodness we've been negative so far, which is a feat in itself, I think, in this day and age. So right now we are very appreciative of the fact that our administrations allowed us to relocate and go somewhere else. Hats off to them and what they've done for us. And right now, in terms of like who we play and whether it's a back-to-back with the same team, it's real. Our players are just mentally not thinking about that. They're just thinking about, hey, hopefully we can get this next game in.
And what's it like for this team? I mean, pretty much playing on the road throughout the entire season. I understand the plans now are to resume and return home to San Jose, but how has everyone dealt with what's probably been the most unusual season in college basketball for you guys?
Correct. I think us in New Mexico probably have had it pretty rough in terms of not having a home, traveling, state to state. It's been a challenge, but our guys are resilient. Our players are resilient. I think student athletes and all athletes are around the country. And I think we've just stuck to spending a lot of time amongst one another just because we have to in terms of protocols and stuff like that. We kind of, you form kind of not a bubble, but kind of like a pod would be a better word for it. And when you do those things, yes, chemistry is formed. We've had a lot of time around one another, and the guys bond together, and they have bonded together. They're playing with a purpose. There's still a lot of basketball to be played. Our team is evolving and changing, and I think most teams are during the season. So I'm very excited about where we are headed right now. And we have San Diego State coming up this week, or actually next Monday, Wednesday. So we have this week off. We get a chance to kind of get our bodies in order, get our minds in order. Like you said, we've been on the road for a long time, over a month. I just, was reunited with my wife and my son. So are my assistants, and my players are back in San Jose, something that's familiar to them. So they've done an unbelievable job, and hopefully we can continue doing this.
And since you mentioned kind of the chemistry aspect and that kind of growing form within the team, have you seen maybe some of the experience from the juniors and seniors on this team, like Richard or Omar, some of these other guys? Have you seen them being able to help some of the youngsters and the year one guys on this team?
Yes, I think when you're a freshman, and I'm speaking for my guys, but I think when you're a freshman, there's ebbs and flows, there's ups and downs, and you have to figure out how to deal with Division I basketball. It's different from high school. High school moves a lot slower than college. The players are bigger, faster, schemes, defense, offense. So all of that's going on for the freshmen. And our veterans have been really good in terms of helping our freshmen out. Richard Washington's been really good for our wing players. As we mentioned before, Ralph A.G. has been great for our post players. And we have other players on our team too, like Trey Smith has been great for us. And he's a non-scholarship player, and he's playing more minutes than most scholarship players. In our program, you earn your keep. So, it's not a situation where, hey, if you have a scholarship, then you just get to play. No, if you're not playing well and the next guy's playing, he's going to play over you. And that's the bottom line in how we run our program. It's about as pure as you can get. So with that being said, we have a lot of upperclassmen and underclassmen. We have our upperclassmen that are helping our younger guys out day in and day out.
Coach, you've done such a tremendous job in your career. Head coaching jobs are hard to get. You've coached a lot of pros. You've had a tremendous amount of success. What's some of the biggest things that you've worked to instill in your program there, and what's something that you'd want people to know maybe about San Jose State that they don't know on the outside that you can share?
Well, I think in terms of San Jose State, San Jose State, I think, is the ultimate diversity, equity, and inclusion university. We have John Carlos and Tommy Smith, the statues on our campus, which are very significant, I think, especially in these times right now, in terms of social justice and human rights. I think San Jose State is a special place, and I think what most people don't know. I think we have a family atmosphere in terms of our coaching staff and our athletic department. I think we have great synergy with our athletic department and our student body and our faculty members, and that is a direct result of our President Papazian, and then Marie Tuitt, who's our athletic director. And then their cabinets. We have a lot of really good people in place in terms of administration. So, that's something that a lot of people don't maybe realize. And as I'm doing this, I want to give a special shout out to Brent Brennan, who's our football coach.
Yeah.
You're talking about a guy who's turned a football program around and won a conference championship. He's gone to a bowl game in a short amount of time. So he's doing a hell of a job. His staff's doing a hell of a job. I'm glad he's going to be here for some time.
Right.
And I think we just have a really great atmosphere here at San Jose State.
Coach, it's, you mentioned the social justice. You mentioned these times. It's obviously Black History Month. We've lost two of our giants and two legends in the game as far as minority coaches in John Thompson and John Chaney. If you had to say, kind of as a coach growing up, I know for myself, we all probably looked up to those guys as coaches and who to idolize and who to model after. What do you kind of take from those guys, and any words you have just kind of on their impact on the game?
Well, I mean, for John Thompson, I mean, I grew up watching Georgetown basketball, and there are a lot of African-American coaches and just coaches around the country that honored him in the beginning of the year. I wore a towel in his honor for our first game, actually, and it was canceled due to COVID. But I was able to finally get my towel over my shoulder for our first game. I think it was against Fresno Pacific at our place. But the Hoya brand and what John Thompson did for African-American coaches and just African-Americans in sports was tremendous. It's still carrying on to this day. And then watching Coach Chaney's teams, at that point when Coach Chaney was really doing a great job at Temple, I was really into the basketball thing at that point. So I was watching a lot of basketball on TV. I remember watching Mark Macon and those great teams play. And I mean, just that style, getting up in the morning, having practice in the morning. I mean, we practice right now at San Jose State in the morning. We go at 6 o'clock in the morning,
right?
Especially in the first semester. So, I think, now that you just asked me that question, I think that's probably rubbed off on me. The reason why we do 6 a.m. practices. I mean, you can get a lot done when you have practice in the morning. From a recruiting standpoint, from the student athletes, having enough time to get to their classes, and then also making sure they go to sleep.
Right. That matters.
Yes.
As a coach, that matters. Real quick, I'll let Eli get one, and we'll ask you a funny question at the end. But what do you think about this year's Mountain West? I mean, you've been in this league now for some time. You've seen the teams come through. You've had an experience in this league. What do you think about the league and where it stands right now?
I love our league. It's a group of 5 league. I actually coached in the league several years ago when I was at TCU. This is before TCU went to the Big 12. So I'm very familiar with the league. I think it's an older league. There are a lot of older players in it via transfer or whatever it may be. So the talent level is great. I think this year our teams are really good, really competitive. So I'm really happy about that. And I think it can only get better. And I think, I think our conference tournament and I think this league race, especially at the top half of it, is going to be very interesting and very challenging and very exciting for everyone.
Absolutely. Eli, you can get one more before a funny question, man. I won't steal all your glory.
All right. I guess one last bit as we look ahead, now riding a 3-game winning streak, plenty of challenging contests coming up. What would you say maybe is 1 or 2 things that you're keen in for this team as they move forward the rest of the season?
I mean, I think probably if you asked any coach that, they would probably say consistency probably at this point in time of the year. If you've had any type of success, especially if you're not at the top half of the league or maybe the league leader, because I think those teams probably have a lot more consistency and they kind of know who they are, their identity. I think when you're at the middle of the pack or near the bottom, you know, you'll have your days or let's say your swings, which we're having right now. And then hopefully our team can take these positive moments and then try and translate that into some type of consistency. And then when you look deeper into it, you try and figure out, well, why were those things happening? And I think we've had great ball movement. And I think if we can take care of the ball, I think we'll have a good chance of being in most games.
Awesome. Well said, Coach. We appreciate you coming on, Coach. We know head coaches have plenty to do. Definitely a big deal. And we wanted to make sure we gave you some recognition for the job you're doing there. If you have a funny story for any point in time in your career or even parenting during the pandemic, feel free to give us. And we got a comment here from Ron Lacewell. He says, "Smarten up."
That's Nate Lacewell's dad. That's one of our freshmen from Houston.
Nice.
So a funny story. Wow. I mean, I can tell you the most recent one, which I think.
Yeah, please.
I think it's hilarious. I think it's kind of funny. So we're playing New Mexico in our second game, and you know, obviously we lost the first game, and you know, Ralph's been playing really consistent. He's been playing really well. And Ralph actually likes to eat Skittles. He loves Skittles. And he actually has them on the bench sometimes, which is fine. You know, it is what it is. and which is great. Like this is I think it's awesome. I think this is kind of like a defining moment. But, you know, as a coach, maybe I'm a little biased to this. But so, you know, it's kind of like the Snickers commercial, you know, when someone's like grumpy and you're like, hey, why are you acting like that? Hey, eat the Snickers. And they eat the Snickers and they go back to how they were.
Right.
So Ralph, it was like a moment in the game. I think he might have been a little tired, but things weren't going that well. So I called timeout. I actually called timeout, and they're coming over the bench, about to sit down. And right before he sat down, I'm like, hey, man, you all right? And he's like, yeah, I'm all right. But I knew and he knew that he wasn't really playing well. so I kind of look, you know, the team's in the huddle, and I'm like, hey, I was like, you want your Skittles? So he's like, nah. He's like, nah. But then one of the players like gave him the Skittles, and he's like, he's reaching in the bag and he's eating his Skittles. But here's the beauty of this story is that as he's sitting down and eating the Skittles, I have my bag next to me on the chair, you know, because obviously, you know, the locker situations, you know, right now it's kind of like AAU basketball. You bring your
right.
Put it on the play the game, man. Let's go. Right. So he's eating his Skittles, and no one's. It's not really funny at that point because it's a normal thing. It's a normal thing.
Right.
So the team's sitting there, and it's a full timeout, so we get to sit there. And I grab my bag that's sitting right next to my chair, and I open it up, and I've got a big bag of M&Ms, peanut M&Ms, and I grab the M&Ms, and he and I are just shoving. And I'm shoving peanut M&Ms in my mouth, and then the team's like, yeah. So they're going crazy. We go out, and I'm not going to be Hollywood and all of that and say, oh, well, because of that, we played well. No, I'm just giving you a funny kind of story that kind of happened, and we reference that now. It's kind of a funny story.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you said there's a little bit of a breakthrough moment. Is that what led to the 3-game winning streak, Coach? What do you think?
No, you know, that's for the movies. You know, we can write a script like, hey, the coach grabbed the peanuts with this player. Like, nah. We needed that timeout. That we needed the timeout. You know, everything else was kind of, you know, it's a funny story. But you know, we're a group that's still evolving.
Right.
And we have a good synergy with our team right now. And, you know, they've gone through a lot. And now we have to continue to see if we can bring this into an on-the-road situation, a true on-the-road situation at San Diego State and, you know, playing against a really good team.
Yeah, the credit to you, Coach, for all the stuff you guys are going through, for you to have that moment. Because a lot of people, with all that's going on and the competitive nature that we all have, would not have had that moment, and it probably made your team even closer. So credit to you, man. Thanks so much for coming on, Coach. You've always been a class act, and so much respect for you. And keep up the good work, man.
Thanks. I appreciate it, guys.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, awesome stuff, man. Awesome stuff. That might be one of the best funny stories that we've had on so far. But we always like to let Eli break down our guest team, and just such a big deal for a head coach to take the time and just, so much has been earned by those guys. He said you have to earn everything in that program, and they're earning everything that they get. So much respect. So we'll let Eli break San Jose State down real quick, and then we'll get to the rest of the league and shut down the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have Coach on and talk about his team they're now currently riding the second longest win streak in the Mountain West. It's been really impressive what they've accomplished the last 3 games. As he mentioned, the roster has been completely turned over from what it was in the start of the season, but plenty of guys have showed up and done a really good job. And Ralph Agee winning the first Conference Player of the Week award from San Jose State since Brandon Clark. We all know what he's doing now in the NBA. It's a really big deal for the Spartans, and it's great to see this team come together with all that they've been dealing with. And I mean, even from a perspective of playing during COVID-19, he mentioned New Mexico, but I don't think there are many teams, if any, that have been impacted in the way that San Jose State's been impacted. Being forced to pack things up and leave, go play games in Phoenix, go on the road. And he mentioned, being reunited with his family after all of these weeks and months. It's crazy. And the fact that this team has battled back and they've won games, it's so impressive to see out of them. And tell you what, Brian, if this winning streak continues and they go on and continue to climb up the standings, I know for a fact I'll be writing a story about how the peanut M&Ms changed the course of San Jose State's season.
I love it, man. Yeah, so again, so much respect. I think you're right. I think they have had the hardest challenge so far with all that's going on. And, again, credit to – I think leadership gets underestimated, how good of a job Coach has done to keep that team together with the adversity that they faced, and to be able to have a winning streak at this time of year. I think for those that understand college basketball and have been in it and cover it like you do, but from being on the inside of the lines, you're always looking around the standings to see what teams have packed it in, or what teams are not together, or what teams just kind of shut it down for the rest of the season. And for them to have the streak that they're on and playing as well as they are, just so much credit to the leadership of Coach and the staff to continue to build what they're building. And again, like you said, to have a recognition of Player of the Week. We know how many good players are in this conference. So again, just so much credit to what Coach is building and the job that he continues to do there. So yeah, a few more teams that we haven't covered is San Diego State. We haven't covered Boise. We haven't covered Nevada, and we haven't covered Air Force, New Mexico, UNLV. So just kind of go through some of those real quick as we close out the show, and we'll open up for any questions if people have any, and then we'll come back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, San Diego State, to start with them, the last 4 games, what they've done is just completely dismantle teams. They took care of Air Force and Wyoming. We spoke with Ken earlier and what SDSU did to his team, but they've been playing just phenomenal offensively. They seem to be firing all cylinders, just like they were back in November. Matt Mitchell has come back from injury and has been playing really good basketball. I don't think anyone expected him to come back and return to his usual self this quickly, but he's already leading the team in scoring once again, and they've been playing really great basketball. And seeing how the rest of their schedule shakes out, they play teams minus the Boise State series. They play teams that are in or outside of that top 4 that we mentioned so often on this show. So it could be a potential stretch run for San Diego State. We kind of almost maybe viewed them as a bit of an afterthought. When Mitchell went down, they dropped those few games in a row, and the rise of CSU and Utah State kind of took the headlines in the conference. But they're right in the thick of things. So it'll be interesting to see what they do now that they have some momentum. And it's an entertaining team that plays really good basketball, and when they're on, they're just so tough to defend.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about this with San Diego State. My year when I was at Fresno, I mentioned that we had swept them during the regular season, and that year Nevada won the regular season championship. They were going to get a bid, and San Diego State started to play some of its best basketball toward the end of the year. And this team, I thought, with having Mitchell out, you kind of learn more about your team, and other guys get to step up in roles, and then you get that good player back. You usually have a chance to take off, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're not only taking off, but they're playing in an extremely dominant fashion in the way they're doing it. So, yeah, will be interesting to see how it kind of finishes out at the top, kind of as Coach Pre mentioned as well. Tell us your thoughts on Boise. Boise had a split recently. They've been hot. They are a deep team. They are a talented team. They had a split in the surprising, probably opening game. Probably people weren't expecting them to lose to Colorado State in the fashion that they did, and then they came back and got the split. So talk a little bit about Boise.
Yeah, well, I think, too, your earlier point about kind of hitting your stride late, I think that it's important in college basketball, but I feel it's so important in the Mountain West. And you look at the teams that have cut down the nets in the Mountain West tournament in recent years, each of these teams hit their stride in February. We saw what Utah State's done the last couple of years. Nevada, when they were just starting to emerge under Musselman, they hit their strides late and were able to capture the tournament. So I think that it speaks volumes about where teams are at right now, and the rosters aren't the same as they were in November. San Jose State certainly knows that, and they're playing really good basketball. So momentum's a really big deal in February. Going back to Boise State, as you said, I don't think anyone really expected them to get popped like they did against Colorado State. To drop that first game by 22 and giving up 78 points, that isn't something that they were doing in the previous 13 games. But the answer, the way that they did, I think is really important to get that series split, to get another quality win on their resume, which, as we know, is just so important for some of these mid-major teams. I still think that Boise State is right in that mix there. But again, they're hitting a stride where they have some really challenging opponents coming up. They have to go to Reno and play Nevada. They have to play UNLV at home, the series afterwards, and then they finish against Utah State and San Diego State. So it doesn't really get much tougher than that. I still think that they'll be fine, and they've been defending really well. Devenir Dutrieve has played phenomenal basketball since he's become eligible. Derek Alston still seems to get a quiet 15 and 17, if that's even possible. Just a lot of depth from top to bottom on this roster. And it means that you can kind of afford to have, maybe Alston has an off night or Shaver has an off night or something, but it isn't necessarily the end of the world because you have a lot of depth and different guys who can pick things up and handle business. And especially when you can defend as Boise State defends, it's always going to give you a decent chance of winning. So I thought answering the Colorado State series was a really big deal to kind of keep that momentum going.
Yeah, and again, just one of the best defensive teams. Coach Rice has mentioned that, and just a team that has an abundance of talent. In a lot of ways, they can beat you. Sometimes it feels like they're out of a game, but they're never out of a game with the talent that they have and the job that those coaches do. So Boise State continues to do what they do, and they're still at the top of the standings. They do have a tough stretch. You talked about that a little bit. Let's talk about Nevada. They just came off of a sweep themselves, playing some good basketball. Excuse me, not a sweep. They just came off of a big win against UNLV. Let's talk about UNLV and Nevada both because they play again tonight. Yeah,
I mean that's always Nevada and UNLV. They don't like each other too much, and especially now with
definitely a rock.
Yeah, it definitely is, and they have their fan groups. They love to have maybe not so friendly banter on Twitter, but since Nevada's rise under Musselman, this series has kind of been amplified in importance, and Nevada sure handled the first one with ease. Really taking care of business. A 29-point win is kind of reminiscent of what the Wolfpack did under Eric Musselman a couple of times, but a really balanced scoring effort, scoring 89 points, and no one was in the 20s. Cambridge and Sherfield led the way. KJ Himes was really strong off the bench. it was a pretty deep rotation that Nevada used in this one, and probably somewhat due to the game getting out of hand. But I still think Nevada deeps up, and they get contributions from players who aren't Grant Sherfield. And as much fun as it is when he takes over, and we've seen him take over that Fresno State series, he was absolutely phenomenal. I still think when it comes down to it, that number 2 guy or that number 3 guy is going to be really important. And whether it's Warren Washington or Cambridge or Kane Millian or some of these other guys, having that number 2 guy steadily scoring in double figures and delivering shots when they're needed, I think that's going to be the key for Nevada. And as much as we talk about those top 4, I think Nevada is still as dangerous as any of those teams. They can put together wins in a row. Steve Alford obviously knows what he's doing and has won big time in this conference. And when you have typically the best player on the floor in Grant Sherfield, that's going to give you a chance. But I still think that supporting cast is going to be really important in deciding what they do the rest of the season.
Right. Talented team, explosive team, a team that definitely can do some things when it comes tournament time and on any given night when they get going. And you mentioned Steve Alford. We've talked about him a lot. His experience in the league, his success in the league, he knows what he's doing. Let's talk about Air Force. Let's talk about New Mexico. Those teams have not played as well as they've probably hoped. We had Jeff Grammer on earlier in the season, and before they had played games, just kind of talking about the promise and some of the makeup that it felt like without having as much talent as they've had recently, that maybe their makeup was similar to that first year's team. Unfortunately, the results haven't come to fruition just yet. And then Air Force is still in year 1, still trying to figure it out, still trying to put everything together. Talk a little bit about those 2 programs before we kind of preview the next week.
Yeah, I think starting with New Mexico, they've struggled so much offensively. They've been really struggling to score the basketball and, rarely getting into the 60s or even the 70s. And some of these offensive outputs, they're just not efficient from the field. They're shooting 24% from deep. Those numbers just won't win you games in the Mountain West Conference. And I think for the most part, this team is still going to be really physical. They have guys who are athletic. They have guys who can be a force in the post and have that presence. But at the end of the day, it's just a matter of, who puts the ball in the basket more often. And the shooting just hasn't been there. And I still think, and Jeff Grammer mentioned this too, I believe in that Fresno State overtime loss, they played as hard as they have played all season long. And Paul Weir, after that Fresno State series, he said the same thing. He just said that he feels so awful for his team because they've been putting forth a really strong effort. They've been playing hard basketball. They're really, contesting shots and doing the little things that it takes to win, but the shots just haven't fallen yet. And I don't know if the tide's going to turn for them. You hope for their sake that they're able to put the ball in the basket a bit more and maybe make these games more competitive, or at least scratch out a few wins. But it's a really offensively challenged team. As much as they've competed and they've been through a similar situation, a lot like San Jose State, with dealing with the relocation and everything like that. So, the team won't make excuses, but it's been a challenging year for a variety of reasons for New Mexico. And for their sake, you hope that one of these guys is able to, come alive offensively and guide them to wins. As far as Air Force is concerned, they got that win over Wyoming and Nevada early on, and that was, almost the tone setter for this team. But since then, it's been a struggle. They dropped both of the games to San Jose State, dropped both of the games to San Diego State. They can really score the basketball, but I believe, as I mentioned a few weeks ago on this show, the lack of extra possessions is really going to hurt them. They don't rebound the basketball very well. The turnovers have been a bit of an issue. And when you play at a slow tempo as they do, I think they have one of the slowest paces in the nation. Not having those extra possessions is really going to hurt. And if shots aren't falling, kind of like the similar situation with New Mexico, it's going to be pretty tough to win some of these games. So we saw glimpses of what Air Force can do when they're playing on their A game and they're able to maximize these possessions, but consistently getting out rebounded and you talk about some of the key front court players in this conference. There are a lot of talented front court guys, and when you're going up against, Neemias Queta or Orlando Robinson or Warren Washington, some of these guys in the conference who can really rebound and be a presence in the paint. When you're undersized and you can't rebound the basketball too well, it's going to be a challenge. So both of those teams are kind of in a similar situation where it hasn't really fallen lately, and they're hoping to kind of get back into the swing of things. But we've seen some promise, and you hope for their sake that they're able to kind of reverse this momentum and get back on the winning side.
Yeah, I think you said that as well as it could be said. Anything else overall in the league that you want to talk about for now? And then obviously we'll look forward to some of the things as we close. We've talked about Colorado State's schedule in particular. We've talked about Boise having a challenging schedule. We have a rival game in Nevada and UNLV tonight. We have the border war, which is a little bit of a rival with Wyoming and CSU, which are always fun games and keep things interesting. Anything else from the league that you just want to kind of mention or shed some light on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the things that needs to be mentioned and applauded is how these coaching staffs and these players have adjusted to COVID-19. A lot of the conferences nationally have been impacted and have had to go on pause. And though that's been the case in the Mountain West as well, they've been doing a really good job getting these games in lately. And it's not easy. A lot of these players are adjusting to playing Division I basketball. The Mountain West had more roster turnover than any conference in college basketball this offseason. And so you're dealing with a lot of young guys who are adjusting to playing Division I basketball and also just experiencing what life is in college during a pandemic. So, hats off to the coaching staffs who have been able to keep everyone kind of in place and being able to compete, but also just stay healthy. And, fingers crossed that's the same case for the rest of the season. But it's been good to see some of these teams who have had issues, maybe in November and December are now testing negative and staying clean and things like that. So from a COVID perspective, that's been really good to see. As far as on the court, now is kind of crunch time for a lot of these teams. Everyone's competing for seeding for the Mountain West tournament. Now that we're in February, the stakes are getting a lot higher now. So you have rivalry games. You have a lot of these games between the top 3, top 4 teams in the conference. It'll be fun to see how everything shakes out. And as I mentioned earlier, momentum is such a big deal right now. And if you can catch some momentum now leading into what happens in March, because we have no idea what that situation is going to look like. If you have good chemistry and you're winning some games and putting those behind you, I think it sets yourself up for a really good run in Vegas.
Yeah, I think it's been mentioned multiple times. One of the more exciting years in the Mountain West conference tournament time is going to be a great race and tune in, must-see TV, along with the race to see who wins the regular season. I think this league, I hope, and we've talked about this before, I hope that the NCAA committee really respects the top of the league and what they've been able to do. And it should be a 2-bit league. I don't know who wins the regular season. I don't know who wins the tournament. I don't know if there's going to be a team that can do both. It hasn't happened in a few years, quite some time in the Mountain West. So hopefully they still get 2 teams in. I'm going to continue to say it's a 2-bit league. And in some cases could even be 3 if they were really giving the respect to the league. We know how much the committee loves the BCS conferences for their reasons. So I don't know if it'll get quite to 3, but definitely any of the 4 teams at the top have shown that they can be a tournament team. And, the beauty of the tournament is you don't even know if one of those 4 teams, somebody else could sneak in and do it. So been an awesome show today to have 3 coaches on, have a head coach on, and have an inside radio personality to be able to share more on this league. Another awesome show. Eli comes with the expertise. His hair is still flawless, even at the end of the show, like it was at the beginning. And yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And if you need anything in the meantime, you know where to find Eli. You may not know where to find the hair products like his, but you know where to find them. So with that being said, awesome show. Any closing words, Eli?
No, I think you put it well with the conference. It's been really competitive, and it's fun to see this many teams competing at the top, and the middle tier is really solid. As you said, I hope the I hope the committee pays their respects for the Mountain West come Selection Sunday, because it's been a league that's been so competitive, and they don't necessarily get the benefit of the doubt with some of their high major games canceled earlier in the year. So you don't have that on your team sheet, so to speak. The competitive nature of this conference has never been better. A lot of teams that are competing for that regular season title. So it should be a lot of fun. And these next 3 weeks, it's going to be interesting, and we'll see some faces emerge and things like that, and it'll be really entertaining to watch.
Yeah, we always talked about it during my time at Fresno. Coach Jones, Coach Wainwright, and Coach Terry would talk about February being separation month.
Yeah.
So
yep.
The race is about separation now before the March Madness begins. So it'll be great to see how teams separate from each other. Again, shout out to San Jose State for their awesome week and their recognition, and shout out to all the teams in the league that are just holding it down, and like you said so well, leading through some really challenging times and doing a tremendous job representing the conference. Until then, till next time, we appreciate it. Stay safe. Tell your loved ones you love them. Be great and be grateful.